Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video, a quest for the best headphone for competitive gaming. I've got the Arya Stealth, which you guys know I think very highly of at this point. The Ananda Nano. I have the Meze 105 AER, and I have the Sennheiser HD 550 that just recently released. When taking into consideration these four headphones, you guys should supplement this video because I just don't have, I'm not going to do a individual review of these four headphones in one video. This is just going to be my gaming impressions, comparing these side by side, swapping in three titles: Valorant, Call of Duty, and Apex Legends. I did not try these in Counter-Strike. The testing will continue. But right now, my opinions of the Arya Stealth are just reconfirmed through this recent batch of testing. I think they are exceptionally good, and I keep them at the rating that I have them right now. I am very surprised by each one of these headphones. I think the Meze 105 AER is very good for gaming-related purposes as well, and the HD 550s I think are great. The HD 550s for me are not going to beat out the HD 490. I think the 490 beats out the 550. It's not even questionable, but I do think that the 550 is quite good. I think it's more of a competitive battle between the 550 and the 560, but overall I still hold very fond opinions of the 490, and I do think they beat out the HD 550, and I'll certainly get into why. When we start off just getting into Valorant, I think that the headphone that's going to provide the most unique experience in comparison to IEMs, if you power them correctly, are going to be the Arya Stealth as well as the Ananda Nano. The amount of rumble, the amount of this intimate, action-packed experience that you feel on the Ananda Nano is a experience that you cannot get on IEMs. When you are comparing something like the 550, a single dynamic, to a IEM, I do feel that the 550 gets the closest to an IEM experience, and I find that there's too many IEMs that do surpass the HD 550 for me, particularly in all three of the games tested, but I do find that the 550 is exceptionally good when comparing them as a use case scenario, an analytical tool in comparison to some of the IEMs that I have at a B+ range. In Valorant, again, you're going to feel the most different experience on the Ananda Nano, the amount of rumble that you get, this sense of spaciousness. It really is exceptional, and the Stealth as well. It's really a different type of sound delivery than you get with the other two headphones. It's a bit more rumbly and just more of an effect with that planar magnetic driver. I find that the Ananda Nano is more rumbly on the low end, and there's a greater emphasis, a greater impact in terms of gunfire, with bass having an extended presence in comparison to the Stealth, and it has a greater bass presence in comparison to the other two headphones as well. But I do find that the bass is cleaner on the Ananda Nano than it is on the Meze as well as the 550s. I do find that the Stealth for me and the Ananda Nano get very close in Valorant. For the Stealth, it to me feels like a deeper presentation, but because of the elevation of a certain audio cues, footsteps, gunfire, some of the abilities going off, etc., the Ananda Nano kind of comes off a little bit more holographic. So picking between these two headphones is going to be very, very hard. The imaging, the depth perception, the verticality, the separation, layering, exceptionally good on these two headphones. Again, audio cues coming out with a bit more emphasis on the Ananda Nano, but I don't find there to be a detraction without those audio effects being elevated, moving to the Stealth, which again feels deeper, more dissipated, helps with layering, helps with that separation a little bit. But again, it's at such a top tier level on the Ananda Nano that the benefits are certainly diminishing. To me, though, the extra dissipation, that step off of abilities and gunfire and things happening around me just make things feel cleaner in intense gunfights. So if I'm pushing a site, I have people next to me, abilities are going off, and the enemies are shooting as well. To me, that lessened rumble, that lessened impact on all of those things moving to the Stealth just has a slight benefit to me. And the one that I would pick would be the Stealth, and that's because of my opinions with respect to the other titles as well. But again, the Ananda Nano is exceptional, and if you're somebody who wants more of like an intimate feel, more of a action-packed feel, while maintaining great separation, great layering, etc., just absolutely pristine imaging on both of these sets, in my personal opinion, you would go for the Ananda Nano. If you're somebody who wants things a little bit more of a clean feel, a little bit less of a rumble and extension in the bass area, and less elevation with gunfire. The stealth is just absolutely fantastic. It helps me feel a little bit more focused. But, moving back and forth between the two headphones, it's kind of like the old 560 versus 900 conversation that I had way back when, having like a little bit of a more intimate presentation with those effects. Sometimes I really do prefer that. But I think for the presentation that these provide in the other titles as well, the stealth just has me leaning to the stealth. The one out of these four that has the most underwhelming presentation for Valorant is going to be the Sennheiser HD550. After listening to the Nano and Stealth directly, it makes it a little bit skewed, I think. But really, I just don't feel like I'm getting a better experience than a B to a B- range IEM in Val. The rumble is lessened in comparison to the other three headphones in terms of that bass response. And you do not really get this grand sense of spaciousness within the cups in comparison to the delivery of the other three headphones. The impact of the audio cues doesn't feel as good as the Ananda Nano and not as clean as the Stealth. Even that sense of a little bit more intimacy on the Meze, I find those audio cues are built up to an extent and pierce through the mix. So when you have somebody, let's say, shooting, it's easier to hear the lighter taps that are happening around you. It's easier to pay attention on certain things that are happening in game during gunfire or things that are a little bit more elevated. I think the 550 is a really nice sounding headphone. I think that it's a little bit more pleasing to me, to the ear, from what I recall from the 560 in terms of gunfire. It just really does have this cleanliness to everything and this reduced harshness to gunfire. I feel, again, going off of memory to the HD 560, it does, however, still cover the read of footsteps and imaging during gunplay on the 550. Overall, a great headphone. I found imaging to be great. I found that depth read to be great. But again, it's just a little bit harder when there are, let's say, a multitude set of footsteps. I found the layering to be a little bit poor on these. Let's say I have two people that are running close to each other. The emphasis on those footsteps, it's just hard to break those apart, and you lose this sense of accuracy on listening to both of those things going on at the same time. When you add a layer of you shooting, it makes that even harder to read in comparison to the other three headphones, to say the least. But again, the price is literally cut in half in comparison to these other headphones. So if you're on a very strict budget, I do find them to still be some of the best headphones that you can get at $199. I think they're very good, and they do maintain a great sense of cleanliness. Again, just not nearly as good, in my opinion, than the Ananda Nano or the Ananda Stealth. So, again, if you're on a tight budget, keep in mind the 550 is quite nice. I would personally prefer IEMs in comparison to the 550. I think it's the least holographic sounding headphone out of the other three on the table. But overall, just in Valorant, those footsteps not really sticking out as much as I wish they would. You lose that sense of urgency, that sense of emphasis, and then you add a sense of that reduction in separation, that reduction in layering. It just becomes a little bit more hard to read. You've got multiple vandals shooting. It kind of turns into this mashed potato effect where things begin to blend a little bit too much. So that's kind of where I stand with the 550. I do think it is a step below the other three headphones for Valorant, but just falling behind in those few areas. I think the Meze has great imaging. It has great depth perception. And the presentation's almost an in-between of the Ananda Nano and the HD 550. There's a greater emphasis on footsteps and elevation in general, with great accuracy of where they are. I found layering to be better on this than the HD 550. But the Meze, the only thing I really give a mark down for is gunfire is just too spicy. It's hot. It's loud. It detracts from the separation and layering when you're shooting, when there's a lot of gunfire going on. And it does cause me, at least, a little bit of fatigue in my listening experience in comparison to the other three headphones. So For me, although it is fantastic for Valorant, you do really have to find like a perfect level of how you're powering these, or you may experience some listening fatigue like I did. When you get these powered like perfectly, I do still find that the things that are elevated are coming through with more emphasis in the mix, footsteps, audio cues, abilities, still coming through more in the mix with a very nice amount of accuracy, better separation and layering, in my opinion, than the HD 550. So when we move over to the Nanos, again, it's this typical hi-fi men signature with, I think, a balanced tonality and a slightly boosted treble over the stealth. I think it's also a boosted bass over the stealth. It feels wider spatially than the 550s and the Meze. Overall produces a very clean sound, and it's slightly easier to drive than the stealth, slightly, on my topping DX9. The bass is more powerful. It feels more dynamic. It's meatier. It's weightier. There's more rumble and vibration and punch to the bass. But it stays clean. You still hear everything coming through. So again, if you're looking for that extra added element of intimacy for Valorant, still an exceptionally good headphone that performs at a top tier next to the Arya Stealth. I do think the upper mids, in comparison to the stealth, the gunfire comes through with more emphasis. The stealth reins in that gunfire, and again, things to me just feel like you're taking a breath during gunfire, particularly when you're pushing a sight and things can get very mumbled and jumbled when you're like an actual 3v3 or 3v5, etc. When you're pushing a sight and multiple people shooting and abilities going off. The 550s, just a very nice neutral headphone. To me, it's fairly comfortable. Again, I do prefer the fit of these other three in terms of overall comfort. You're getting a really nice, neutral, analytical experience with these. I just find them to fall behind when directly comparing them to the other three headphones. The Mezes are nice, balanced, they're natural, but that bass is richer and more hard felt in that mid-bass region than the 550s. The thing that kills me, though, is a boost in that 3 to 6K region, just making things feel a little bit too hot, spicy sometimes with gunfire. Again, power those very perfectly, and it reins it in a little bit. Moving to Apex Legends. The king for me is still going to be the Arya Stealth. It beats out the Nano for me because everything just feels more controlled, but keep in mind, very, very close between these twos. It just makes the experience more relaxing when in gunfights, when there's third parties, fourth parties, when you are octane stimming, you're bang smoking, you're shooting ults off on Gibby or bang, there's less rumble on that low end. So it's think cleaner during gunfire, cleaner during abilities, at a level to me that is still beyond accurate when listening to things that are happening around you, despite the emphasis being drawn down on some of the audio cues that are happening in game. Again, the imaging, the read, the depth perception, the emphasis and urgency, still just absolutely phenomenal on the Arya Stealth. Really just a super good headphone for Apex Legends in particular. It's more controlled, I feel, than the Ananda Nano when people are getting cracked. When you're popping a battery, you're popping a shield cell. Those things are more tame, so that when you're listening to things happening as you're micromanaging your health and healing, to me, the Stealth just wins out. Things less piercing. When you're shooting a Mastiff in close range fights, it's not as overwhelming. Grenades going off, it's not as boomy, and cracks of armor, just more controlled on the Stealth than on the Ananda Nano. But still, like the Ananda Nano, I can't stress enough, it is still exceptional with respect to the separation, the layering, the imaging. To me, again, it's just a more relaxed feel on the Stealth than on the Ananda Nano. So when things are really, really getting spiced up, it just feels as though things are more clairvoyant on the stealth to me than the Ananda Nano. Two very good headphones, again, more intimate and making those audio cues elevated on the Nano in comparison to the stealth. But the stealth, everything is just coming through so good on in Apex Legends. I think the 550 is superb in Apex Legends. I think it's the best game for the 550 out of Call of Duty as well as Valorant. Apex, really, really good. The sense of spaciousness is superb. You've got a great emphasis on slides, people popping shield cells. The things that you need to hear pop through the mix to a good extent. It's, again, still this more neutral headphone in comparison to the other three, and nothing really feels ever too spicy. Like gunfire, to me, if just going off memory, feels more tame on the 550 than it did the 560. I don't find gunfire overwhelming or piercing at all. I find that there is great detail retrieval, separation, layering, great on this, just not as good in comparing it to the hi-fi mins on the table, but still exceptionally good, particularly at this price point. I just like that nothing really ever feels like I'm getting this sense of occlusion with a lot going on, ultimate shooting, third parties, fourth parties, etc. So again, when you're micromanaging your health, it really does do a good job at keeping things off of you, so you're listening to the things that are happening around you. It's more dissipated in feel than the Meze, so you get this just clean, pushed back, neutral, analytical read on the 550s. Great imaging, great verticality, great sense of just nothing really overwhelming you in game. I do find, though, that when you are comparing them directly to the hi-fi mins, like the imaging, the separation layering, still much above on the two options here. When you get to the Mezes, I do find that Apex is probably the worst title for the Mezes. You've got this great presence and emphasis on audio cues, making them feel more holographic than the 550s. But gunfire in that 3 to 6K range, it's just too piercing to the level of giving me some fatigue. And because of that elevation in gunfire, there is a hit in the layering, a hit in the separation on the Mezes. I think it's a superb headphone in terms of its imaging, its depth perception, its read of things that are happening around you. It is just a clairvoyant headphone when you are wanting a very accurate read on where and it's precisely where everyone is. But the gunfire is just too hot, too spicy. So when there are third parties, fourth parties, or even when you are, let's say, unloading a 301, it's just too much. When you are popping things like heals as well, it's more elevated than the other sets on the table, and it can cause a little bit of occlusion when people are pushing you, but not too much. I think it has a good stage presentation. Again, I still feel like it's kind of like an in-between of the 550 and the Nano. Things don't feel on top of you. It's more dissipated in feel and a little bit extended in terms of depth, a little bit more pushed back. And again, just superb imaging, great verticality, and other than the gunfire and grenades as well, like things just exploding can just be really spicy and hot. But you just have to really pay attention to like getting that power perfect so the gunfire is not too spicy, but you're still hearing the elevation and the emphasis in some of the audio cues. It's just one that I found you really have to tinker with the amount of power that you're running to it, or that the range of gunfire is just a little bit too overwhelming. Now for Call of Duty, I'm still testing COD, but I think the order of what I'm going is still the stealth on top. I love the more dissipated feel, things pushed off of me. I'm still picking up on people sliding, kicking in doors. Some of the more bassy things that occur in COD still coming through with great clarity. I just find, again, in gunfights, it's a little bit more clairvoyant, but the Ananda Nano is absolutely fantastic. The Meze and the 550s, to me, get close to one another, but I'm kind of actually leaning to the 550 for COD, but I do need to do some more testing. for the 550 directly in comparison to the Meze. But still, like without a doubt, the Hi-Fi Mens for me are getting on top of the leaderboard here for competitive gaming headphones. So just to kind of close out, I need to do some more testing. I'll try to get some testing in some additional titles. To me, the 550s, like if you already own the 560s, I wouldn't say run out and grab these immediately. If you own the 490s, I think the 490s are better. If you're looking for something, to me, that feels a little bit more tame in the region of gunfire, I do think that these might solve that for you in comparison to the 560s. Again, just going off memory. If you're looking for or if you were interested in if the Meze was really, really good for gaming, I do think it's super good, but you're just going to have to, again, worry about that elevation in gunfire, as well as grenades coming through at a piercing extent in some of the titles. But, you know, imaging, verticality, emphasis on cues. Again, it's got that nice holographic feel, a little bit more intimate in feel than the 550s. The Ananda Nano, I think, are absolutely incredible, and it was a very close run to the Arya Stealth. To me, because I play a multitude of titles, I'm still leaning towards the Stealth, but for Valorant, these are really neck and neck, just two different feels. If you want a little bit more intimacy, go for the Ananda Nano. They are incredible. If you are looking for something that feels a little bit deeper and a little bit more clairvoyant during some of the more rumbly things on the low end or even during gunfire, to me, the Stealth is just an absolute king of a headphone. Exceptionally well done. So for great headphones, it makes this video very difficult, but to me, I'm putting the Arya Stealth very slightly above the Ananda Nano because of that multitude of titles. And I would put the 550 and the Meze very close. For Valorant, the Meze wins. For Apex and COD, I think I'm putting the 550 above. 4 very good headphones, all making the wallhack certification tier list. I'm going out of town, so I just wanted to get this video to you guys as quickly as I could, because I know I've had you guys waiting. It's just a lot of testing, a lot of hours that I do swapping between the 4 of these. But I will try to update you guys either in a comment or in a subsequent video regarding my final thoughts on COD, and I'll get these tested in CS2. I hope it helped, guys. I know it's a lot of information and not a whole lot of time, but any questions, let me know in the comments. See you guys in the next review. Peace.